G'day everyone, how's it going? It's your mate Castlegate, and I'm bringing you another video about Gemcraft Frostborn Wrath. And in fact, you know what, this video could almost be extended to be a video for Chasing Shadows and Labyrinth. Actually, no, not really. Who am I trying to kid? It's about Gemcraft Frostborn Wrath, and specifically I'm going to be looking at and answering the question of what exactly is the optimal distribution of skill points in your skills if you want to get the best possible amount of mana out of your mana farm given a certain amount of skills. Now, what I mean by that is when you go ahead and you put in all of your skill points and all of your other skills except for the 4 skills that matter for your mana farm, whatever's left, you need to somehow distribute those skill points into, you've got your True Colors skill, you've got your mana leeching skill, you've got traps, and lastly you've got also, what is it? Amplifiers. Amplifiers being a tricky one to try and understand actually, given its text. So basically what you want to do is you don't want to just put even amounts of skill points or upgrade them all to the same amount of skill levels in order to basically get your mana farm going as best as possible, because not all of those skills are equal. They are all weighted a little bit differently. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and tried to work out, or at least extrapolate based off testing, lots of testing, what all of those skill points or what all of those skills offer to the table in terms of how much more effective they are if you tick them up 5 levels when compared to each other, so that we can get an optimal skill distribution of skill points across all 4 of those skills and get the most out of the same amount of skill points as if you were doing them normally right now. I'd say almost nobody out there playing this game actually goes ahead and plays this game with mana farms that have skills put into the skill points put into skills at the correct levels. I know that I wasn't actually doing that. In fact, after making all of the material that I did and all of the testing that I did for this video, I'm actually quite surprised, and I've been able to, as a result, almost double the amount of effectiveness my mana farm has just by distributing the skills in a different way. So I will be sharing that, and I will also be sharing my method of trying to calculate that next. I've just got to go ahead and write down some data. This is what I'm doing for my testing. I'm just going to field N2. I'm setting up 7 traps like this with varying amounts of amplifiers attached to them, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this is how I actually test and find out whether or not the distributed skills actually amounts to the gems in the traps actually being better or worse in terms of just raw amount of mana that they can generate per second. So just be doing that a few times and then I'll get back to you shortly. Okay, welcome back. It's spreadsheet time. Yes, that's right. What I did was I went ahead and first took down my original values that I've been using anyway recently. This is what they're at currently, and I just wanted to see, based off this, the original values, which I've got down here actually from N2, use it as a baseline to compare with and see whether or not I was even close to optimally distributing all of my skill points. Now, just to make it clear, for my save that I have over 300,000 wizard level, I have usually, after distributing skill points across all the other skills in a way that I would like, basically maxing out anything that can be here, I'll show you. Maxing out everything that can go to a maximum of 50, and then also taking care of all of the components and also the resonance in the way that I like, ignoring mana leech of course. Then this is kind of what I'm left with. which means I've got around just over 2 million skill points to distribute. 2,060,000. But of course, I do want just a little bit left over to give me a little bit of initial mana bonus. Not much, but just a little bit. So I'll be doing all of my calculations based on the assumption that I've got 2,030,000 skill points. Now, I know for most of you, that's pretty much in the realm of unrealistic for you guys to be able to use, but trust me when I say, so long as you have around 50 odd thousand spare unspent skill points to spend on these 4 particular skills, then the ratios are more or less the same as the ratios that I'll be using. They do change a little over time as you go further and further down into, you know, more unspent skill points available to you, but they don't change much. Most of the change is actually seen early in the stages where you've got, you know, 1,000 unspent skill points, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 skill points. After about 50,000, it kind of sort of settles into what seems like a fairly common ratio that's required for putting in your skill points into your traps, amplifiers, mana leech, and true colors. So even though I've got this much, you can still use this information and use the same ratios to try and max out your effectiveness in terms of putting your skill points in the best way possible to get mana farms that are as potent as possible. Okay? So, first thing to do when trying to calculate that, and I will explain my method of getting to this point so that you can, you know, critique it, you can follow it, you can check for yourself and determine, okay, you agree with me or you don't agree with me, and you can use this or not. It's up to you. But basically the method I used was a procedural method, not a mathematical method, because honestly, when it comes to trying to calculate a maximum for, you know, 4 different variables in an equation, I'm not sure if it's possible. I think it might be possible using some sort of, I don't know, some warped wizardry version of bloody calculus and integrals and so forth. But honestly, it's been years since I've done integrals, and I honestly didn't know where to start with that. So I thought, okay, stuff it. Instead of trying to mathematically calculate based on all of these values what distribution I should have, also based on the incremental growth of the amount of skills required to raise another 5 skill levels for each skill, you know, what's the optimal ratio of spread of these when compared to each other. I didn't quite know how to do that, so instead all I did was I went ahead and put in the benefits per 5 levels straight from the game. As you can see here, I calculated that for true colors, even though you don't get a benefit from every 5 levels for your second orange benefit down there, you've got your yellow benefit which still applies. So every time you tick this up 5 levels, it goes from 75 to 90, which means every 5 levels you strengthen your mana farm by about 15%, or an extra 15% on top of what it is. With mana leeching, it's, let's see, you've got, this is just a straight addition because it's an additional something for gems of grade 7 and over for every 5 level increase. So increase that 5 levels, you go from 120 to 144. So that's an increase of 24%. Oh God, I'm messing up my skills everywhere. So I recorded those okay. This is per 5 levels, 15%. Per 5 levels, 24%. Traps, I never really paid attention to it, and I never really did the calculation properly, and I probably should have, because I gave traps a lot more benefit than I think I should have. With traps, we go from 125% to the special multiplier and 15% extra trap firing speed, both of which don't add together, but they do affect each other in a multiplicative way. They go from 125 to 150. So we've got, compared to your mana leeching and your true colors, we're trying to normalize all of these, okay, so that we can directly try to compare them one another with respect to some sort of common game, which in this case is every 5 levels, because we've got this 5-level incremental bonus for 3 out of the 4 skills. So every 5 levels we find that we've got 4 traps, 25% increase to the multiplier of bonus. Well, it's a 25% multiplier extra on the bonuses, which is the component, but you've also got an increase of 3% in trap speed. So how do you calculate that? It's very simple, really. We've got 25% component power, so you've got an extra 25%, but then you have to multiply that by 3%, which is extra firing speed, so times 1.03. The true value is 25.75. So we record that in here. That's the bonus for traps every 5 levels. Amplifiers, on the other hand, that's a pain in the neck. What does this mean? Can someone please try and actually explain it to me? Put it in real terms, some way mathematically, so that it can actually be calculated, because I couldn't figure it out. I made many attempts in the past. I've made another effort again, and you know what? I even did some testing. It turns out the testing was also wrong, because well, amplifiers is somewhat incredibly complex. Let me explain. Here we've got, okay, you've got a range and damage across the 2 bonuses, which don't affect your mana farm, but what does affect your mana farm is firing speed and special effect, which is your component power. Okay, so every 5 levels we've got a firing speed increase of 2%, ratio spread, whatever that means, and we've also got a 0.4% increase in special effect. Now, here's the thing. Those numbers, you cannot calculate the benefit of amplifiers in a vacuum, because that's based on whatever gem is put there. Now, if you put gems in there that are the same grade, but you've put different values in mana leeching and true colors, then that alone, without adjusting amplifiers, by adjusting mana leeching and true colors, you're actually adjusting how powerful amplifiers is as a skill and also as a tower when it's used in game. So it becomes really complex, because amplifiers adds a bonus, but is also dependent on the bonuses of these 2 other skills affecting it. So really, it's not linear, it's not polynomial, it's just ridiculous. It's really hard to calculate. So how do you do that when one of the variables is also dependent on the other variables, as well as when competing with all 3 variables as well? It's a mathematical nightmare. I'm sure it's possible to do it, but you know what? I couldn't do it. So instead, what I thought to myself was, okay, I cannot go ahead and try and boil all of this down to a single mathematical bloody expression and just get the numbers out. Instead, I had to do what I could do, which is, as a programmer, go ahead and create a script that goes ahead and calculates all of this stuff. So, what is amplifiers? Well, I did some testing. Without any other skills inside true colors or mana leeching, these are the values that I got for 25 amplifier. Remember 25, because even with no skill points put into here, because of the talisman, I start at 25, and I couldn't be bothered moving all of my talisman pieces out of my talisman just to get this right down to 0 for testing purposes. I thought, alright, I'll just know that it's there and adjust, and I would try and get 3 data points of differing amounts of amplifiers put in there. So I did it 25 amplifiers levels, 30 and 35 amplifier levels, and just like you saw in Field N2, I did that setup. I recorded the raw data for 0 right through to 6, and then I calculated what is the maximum mana. You know what? Just ignore this. This was actually for my own interest. It doesn't increase and increase per increase. It doesn't really matter for this particular video. What you're looking for is the maximum amount of mana per second. If this thing is in a trap and there's monsters always going over it and it's always firing and always generating mana as efficiently as it can in the game, in the field, then this is what it would produce every second, this much mana, which is quite a lot actually for a grade 12 gem. We've got at 25 at amplifiers, and mind you, this is also 25 for mana leeching and true colors as well. We've got 11,038.55 mana per second for a trap with 6 amplifiers around it, all with grade 12 gems. For 30 amplifier level, we've got a little bit more, and we've got a little bit more again for 35. Now, do I have any? Yeah, I think I do. No, I don't. I thought I had some stuff here. But basically, long story short, what we have here is, if you look at the percentage increase, if we go ahead and divide that by that, remember, this is the difference. Well, that's wrong. Oh, foolish me. I'm missing another one. Okay, take 2. There we go. It looks like there is an increase with everything set to just 25 and then 30 and then 35. We're increasing around 6%. So I thought, okay, that's a good place to start. Let's put amplifiers at 6%. But it actually turned out to be really wrong, because at that point in time, I didn't take into account the fact that values in these two fields could affect this field. So it's kind of like the further up you go in terms of how many levels you put into these two, the more effective amplifiers becomes, oddly enough, which means it becomes more significant over time. So the ratio of your distribution of skills should include more and more into amplifiers and a little bit less and less into all of these other three, as you have more and more unspent skill points to sink into these 4 skill points, if that makes sense. So basically, that 6% starting point was completely useless. So let's just ignore all of this trash and start again. So I thought, okay, I've got to start somewhere. Let's just throw a number out there and start at pretending that this thing amplifies. Let's say it's 20%. Okay, so let's do 20%. Let's pretend it's, let's do some calculations, run some scripts to create giant tables of where someone would put in values of 5 levels of skill points in one of these 4, and then incrementally keep on comparing them, assuming that amplifiers is worth 20% as a bonus per 5 levels to your mana farm, and also do the same thing for 22, 24 and 26%. Go back to field N2, record all of the raw data, and then we'll see where everything lies and see exactly how powerful everything is. So what did we do? We created these tables. Now, what are we looking at here? We are looking at a table of 5,000 entries, okay? From 3 to 5,002. Each of these tables assumes a starting point of 0 skill points inside all of your skills and a total amount of 0 skills spent. Then, using a script, it decides, okay, I'm going to compare, I'm going to project how much benefit would I get given the amount of skill points, or yeah, given the amount of skill points it would cost to tick each of these up 5 from its previous value. What is the total percentage benefit value compared to all the others? And whichever one wins out it gets ticked up 5 levels, and we record the total amount of skill points that was spent to increase from this to this, and step through that incrementally 5,000 times. So how did that work? Let's see, for traps, so amplifiers at 20%, 22%, 24%, and over here is 26% the last run. It turns out that, spoiler alert, assuming amplifiers is worth about 24% does seem to be the butter zone for this particular calculation, and this therefore is actually your proper ratio that you should use to spread out your skill points, or something very, very close to it anyway. I had no idea. It turns out that compared to my original values, I was way off. Look at that, amplifiers at 500? Forget it. Also traps at 1,200 compared to mana leeching, and also again amplifiers. That's way too high, believe it or not. Those values should all be much closer to each other. True colors, it's kind of, sort of, there in terms of guessing, but nah, it turns out it was still a little bit off. So originally I had maximum mana per second, which was this number, whatever it is, but after running the script, and I'll show you the script in a minute and how it works, after running the script and getting all of the raw values, assuming amplifiers was, you know, at 20%, 22, 24, and 26%, running that script and then looking up in the table if I had around 2,030,000 skills to distribute across these 4. These are the levels, increments of 5, that I would need to get the most, assuming amplifiers was these percentages. And it turns out that after plugging in all the numbers in my skills, going back to Field N2, doing all those setups, recording all of these numbers again, just as before, these are the numbers that I got, and I've highlighted in yellow for 0 and 1 amps. Well, 0 amps is best when you're assuming there's no way of putting any amplifiers down. It's incredibly rare, but it's possible. In which case you will put no skill points in your amps, obviously, which means this number isn't really the true number for 0, but we're not worried about that. We're worried about what happens if you have a mana farm with 5 or 6 amplifiers around your mana farm. What is the best skill distribution? And it turns out that assuming amplifiers adds an extra 24% to your value every time you tick it up 5 levels is the best, because look at this number. Firstly, this is only a little bit over half that. Hell, even at 20%, it's still, what are we looking at here? This is only 62% or 63, something like that, as effective as this. So it turns out my values were all over the place. 24%, there you go. This is it. We've got, do I have more stuff here? Yes, I do. There we go. Let's just show some more values. Oh, not those ones. We don't care about those. So it turns out that these are the amounts of skill levels that I should put, and I found that up by looking up in this table. I went ahead and scrolled all the way down until I could find where we're at just over 2 million. Here we go. This is the row. 2,032,580 skill points. Yep, that looks like about right. That's how much I would have. Okay, it's decided that this is the optimal amount of skill points that you would put in for each of those 4. I went ahead and plugged those in. That's these. Plugged them in, and like I said, this was the output. For 5 and 6 amplifiers, I'm getting almost twice as much as when I had my skill points previously. And I think that's mostly just because, here, let's put these a little bit closer so we can actually compare them. Yeah, it's mostly because my amplifiers was way too low. Let's see, traps was kind of close. Mana leeching should have been more. but traps should have been a little bit less. And also my true colors, I gave it too much benefit of the doubt. True colors should have been a lot lower, and I think that's mostly to make up for the difference in amplifiers. But yeah, it turns out that lowering traps and lowering true colors a lot definitely lent to me gaining a lot more in amplifiers. And with this ratio spread of levels in Frostborn Wrath, I am now effectively, by not going up any more wizard levels, by not obtaining any more skill points, but just redistributing the skill points that I had compared to what I previously had, I've made my mana farms now almost twice as effective. How good is that? And also that answers the age-old question of exactly how much skill points do you put in where. No one really knew. I saw some articles about it and so forth, and some people tried to do some very good mathematics, but honestly when I tried their distributions, well, the proof is in the pudding, and that's when you go ahead and plug these values in, put them in traps, and you actually record the output. Turns out it's not great. So this is actually your true actual distribution right here. So basically this is the ratio really. If you have like a certain amount of skill points, you want to sink 17% of your skill points into true colors, 27% of your skill points into mana leeching, same for amplifiers, and the remainder 29% of your skill points you should put into traps. That's pretty much it. Okay, now for those of you who have any doubts about what's going on with the script and whether or not I did that correctly, let me just show you the script really quickly. Basically, I went ahead and ran this script for 20%, 22, 24, oops, 24% and 26% of amplifiers adjusted in terms of percentage benefit, to run out those tables and then get that data and determine, okay, what percentage did look like it was probably about best. It looks like it's probably about 24%. It might not be exactly 24%, but look, it's pretty close. We're talking about now a difference of, it's within 5% as opposed to within, 45%, which is what my original was. That's ridiculous. You don't want that sort of error. You want to be able to get the most out of your skill points. So given that for every 5 level increase you get this much benefit from true colors, mana, leeching, traps and amplifiers, and also given that you've got to calculate, you've got to first store what the current was prior to deciding what happens in the next step, and you've also got to calculate how much more mana is going to, or not mana, sorry, how much more skill points could be added, which is here. This is the potential. How many skill points it will cost you to tick up 5 from what is currently existing, and then trying to normalize that with compared to the others if you do the same thing, and determine where putting the next 5 levels worth of skill points, whatever that might be, gives you the most bang for your buck in terms of making your mana farm stronger. Let me show you what I mean with the real terms. Okay, so we've got everything zeroed out. Okay, well, all 4 of our skills are 0. Obviously, because traps gives you the most benefit. If you're going to increase a single one of these 4 skills 5 levels, you would obviously put that into traps first. Then after that, you would go ahead and put in 5 points in either mana leeching or amplifiers. Why? Well, firstly, because you get more bang for your buck than if you put in 5 levels worth of skill points in true colors, but also if you adjust how much it would benefit you would get if you put 5 into mana leeching or amplifiers, as opposed to increasing traps from 5 to 10, you would find that well, you don't get as much benefit putting in traps the next 5 skill points because it costs more. Remember, going from 0 to 5 levels in skills costs you 15 skill points, but going from 5 to 10 will cost you an extra 40 skill points. So, to normalize that, what you would do is you would adjust, given these values over here, you've got like, say for example, okay, we're going to get an extra 25.75% if you increase this skill by 5 levels. But in doing so, what you need to do is you need to say, okay, so if I compare adjusting true colors, for example, compared to traps, I need to normalize these two or make them equivalent in terms of dividing them by a ratio that is dependent on how much skill points they give. No, not they don't give. How many skill points they consume to rise them the next 5 levels. So for example, let's do this in real time. If we've got, let's work off this one. This is what's existing, okay? We've already put 5 in traps. Where do we go next? 5 in traps to make it 0, 0, 10 and 0? Or do we put 5 in mana leeching or amplifiers instead, given they both add an extra 24%? Well, quite simply put, you would go ahead and work out, let's see, what is it? Basically, we would say, is true colors, no, let's not work off true colors because that would never really be the next decision. In this instance, let's look at mana. Mana and amplifiers is the same, so let's just look at this one. Mana leeching, do we put 5 in mana leeching or do we put 5 in traps? Well, traps, what we do is we go ahead and say, okay, the adjustment for traps, which is the total amount of skill points that is required to tick it up another 5 levels, which in this case would be 40 skills, does this give an percentage increase more than the adjusted percentage increase for increasing the other one? So we've got, if we put 40 skill points here in traps, then we would increase it another, what is it, 25.65 or something, 25.75. So we're increasing traps by that, or we could increase by 0.24 in either amplifiers or mana leeching. But that's not the end of the story because, let's be honest, you're not putting in the same amount of skill points, so which one do you determine? The simple way to do that is to adjust this by multiplying it equals this times that divided by that. So, in other words, really, putting in 40 skill points at this point in time into traps will only give you a 25.75% increase in your effectiveness to your mana farm. But if you go ahead and put 5 points in here, which will only cost you 15 skill points, then comparatively speaking, it's the same for that little increase as adding an extra 64%. It doesn't actually add 64% increase to your mana farm's effectiveness, but compared to if you did the same with this, that's what it would work out to. So it's not really saying this is what you'll get, it's saying adjusted, this is what this value is compared to this value, and therefore from that you can determine, if you do this comparison across all values for each of them, which one is the highest adjusted, and therefore from that you can say, okay, yeah, we definitely don't want to put another 5 in traps, we want to put 5 in mana leeching. So then from there, next round you can put 5 in traps, which we know is a lot compared to mana leeching, which means it's comparatively also a lot compared to amplifiers. But also mana leeching has also got 5 now, so we can't put another 5 in mana leeching and grow that to 10 without putting 5 in amplifiers first, so we'll do that. And then after this, we do all of our adjusting again, and we determine should we put 5 in true colors, mana leeching, traps, or amplifiers. That's what the algorithm does. It does this constant stepping up process to determine, okay, where is the next 5 skill levels going to be put based on how many skills it actually requires, skill points, but also comparatively how much better it will make our mana farm compared to doing the same thing for all the others. It does this, it's just a giant if statement. If for true colors it's greater than or equal to the adjustment for mana, trap, or amps, then we'll go ahead and tick it up, and then we'll record the new total value as well, because we use that total value to use as lookup table to look back to what sort of skills distribution we need, and then we go back into N2 and we test that, record the values, and lo and behold, that's how I found out that basically after doing this a few times, turns out that 24% is a great assumption for amplifiers, and also the skill distribution is the best when using real data. And that's what it does. It just does this, and then it loops through, it goes and ticks up A, which is the output row, and then it does the whole thing over and over again. It gets the previous values, which would be the values that were set from the previous time. It will figure out the potential for the amount of skill points that would be required if you wanted to tick up each of these skills again. It would do the comparative analysis again, and through that it would determine which of these skills gets the next 5 over and over and over again. That's the script. These are the outputs. As you can see, they kind of grow and they diverge away from each other as opposed to early on. Like I said before, if you've got, say, 10,000 skill points, you can already see a little bit of a divergence. Instead of there being 5 across the board or 10 across the board with only 15 in traps, this is because the numbers aren't so precise. The amounts of skill points being spent here in the early small amounts of total skill points to distribute, it's pretty small, so you don't get good numbers. But only after 10,000 do you start to see the proper trend. You've got 45, 75, 80, and 75. That's looking a little bit more closer to the ratio that I've shown you before. If we look at for 50,000 odd skill points instead of 10,000, you've got 105 for true colors, 170 for, well, technically, alright, let's look at this one because it's let's look at this one. Amounts to the same thing. 49,000, you've got 165 skill levels in both mana leeching and amplifiers. You've got 180 levels in traps and 105 in true colors. You'll find that ratio is pretty close to the ratio that I've shown you for if you've got 2 million odd skill points available. In fact, I used this one. This is where I got my numbers from. And just for funsies, let's go all the way down and look at if you did this 5,000 times, how much mana would you need, or skill points, sorry, would you need to actually make this number? This is a huge number. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 81, as near as makes no difference, 81 million skill points to distribute. That's a lot, I'm not going to lie. That is quite a lot. These are the numbers that you would distribute. So 4,225 in true colors, 6,760 in both amplifiers and mana leeching, and 7,255 in traps. So there you go. Those are the tables. Those are the outputs. Kind of confident that the script works and that this is a good representation. Either way, even if it's not the best representation, you know what? I was able to almost double the amount of mana output from my mana farm just by adjusting the levels from this rubbish to these values. And, well, proof is in the pudding. It shows. It really does generate a lot more mana. So, there you go. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a like or a dislike, whatever. Any engagement's good. Feel free to comment, and also let me know if you don't agree with my method. If you think that there should have been a different method, or I've missed something, or I've oversimplified something. It does seem like these ratios did come out a little bit neatly when compared to the ratios of the benefits to each of, that each of the skills give when you tick them up 5 levels. So reasonably confident that this is the most optimal, but if you disagree, by all means let me know. I'll go ahead and rejig the script and redo all the stuff based on any new insights that you have, and we'll see whether or not there is an even better and more optimal way of doing this. Also, yeah, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, comment. Let me know what you want me to do next if you want me to do something. But I hope you found this video useful, and I hope you get a lot more out of your mana farms. Anyway, that's it. Catch you later, everyone.